Hi, good morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the latest in Blues Fireside Chats. These are sessions where we get together with some of our partners or customers who are doing, groundbreaking work in their respective fields to talk about the challenges they're facing and the customer value that they're delivering. Today, we'll be talking about AI-powered predictive maintenance with a partner of Blues called Industrie Intelligente, and I'll introduce Sarah in a moment. My name is Alistair Fulton. I'm COO at Blues, as part of which I'm responsible for Blues partner ecosystem. And with that, I will hand over to you, Sarah, to introduce yourself and Industrie Intelligente.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Alistair. Thanks for first, I would like to thank you for the opportunity you gave us to share our product and also to talk about Blues technology. So, as I said, my name is Sarah. I'm a telecommunication engineer, and I have been working in hardware development, and I switched to IoT and software development solutions 3 years ago. So I'm the founder of Industrie Intelligente, and we are, as I said, we are working on IoT solutions.
But as you know, at Blues, we believe that every physical product out there is going to get transformed into a cloud-connected, data-centric, intelligent machine with a backup intelligent service, and that transformation can't and won't be limited just to those companies with massive R&D budgets and access to security, communications, AI talent, which makes companies like your own particularly important as providers of those solutions. Obviously, for Blues, our focus is on making it easy for folks like Industrie Intelligente to connect things. So I guess my first question is I mean, how did you get into this space? You talked a little bit about your background, but what drew you into predictive maintenance in particular?
Yeah, actually, after receiving requests from our clients regarding issues encountered in their industrial production chain, we saw the need to remotely monitor the parameters. So that's what led us to the idea of designing our first IoT system.
And I mean, I guess before you came across Blues, what approach did you use to integrating connectivity into those products?
Yeah, most of them were processing locally, so we didn't use much cloud solutions. And since Industrie Intelligente is quite new, we launched it about 2 years ago. So we had the chance to start directly with Blues in this solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very often we find companies, I would guess our customers and partners fall into a couple of different groups. One is they've tried and failed with other forms of connectivity or found them too expensive. And some like yourself who kind of started afresh. It's always quite interesting to understand that. Now, for your customers before, I guess before Industrie Intelligente, what were they doing when it came to predictive maintenance?
Like they were using traditional approaches like corrective approaches and preventive approaches. Predictive maintenance is quite new for them. So we are trying to explain them the new method and try to convince them to adopt it regarding its benefits.
And what when you go through that process, I guess with customers, what's which bits are you having to persuade them of, I suppose? It's always interesting to understand where customers see value and where they see barriers. Tell me a little bit about what you encounter with the customer.
Yeah, the first barrier will be the budget, like the cost of the solution, because they can see value, but when they, I don't know, for us, it's obvious that the solution is good and it's great, and sometimes we fell in love with our technology, as engineers. But for the client, he has to see the real value, and if his actual process doesn't work and he has a lot of shutdowns in her system, he always try to adopt new technologies. But the technology must be cost effective so that they will be convinced to use it.
And do you get into questions about, because I think what you said earlier, I think rings very true across IoT. There's a lot of us, we're all engineers in one way or form, and it's very easy to get overexcited about the
Yeah,
technology.
blended.
And often I think that's, customers
It's a
have
cliche. Yeah.
they've scratched their heads and thought, well, great, I know that you find this interesting, but why do I? Um, I think the lack of a clear business case is often the first and last barrier, for a lot of enterprise customers, because if they can't see a clear business case, why would they even engage? How do you tackle that with a customer who says, interesting technology, why should I invest money?
Yeah, actually, we are quite struggling with this
Mm.
because the client is not aware of the benefit of the technology. So we have to educate them, explain them why they should use the technology, what's the benefits. And I think what I find difficult is to let them be patient because the return on investment won't be in the next on month or in the next year. Sometimes it get to 2 years. So yeah, we are trying to educate them. And I think with the evolution of technology, even if they don't want, they will have it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's different from, when the transition to cloud happened,
Mm-hmm.
that was driven by a very clear understanding on the part of most customers, at least, that it was a cost-saving method. And
Yeah.
also, despite early security concerns, it was actually a more secure solution than having servers, sitting under people's desks, in or a server room somewhere in a facility. But the business case was very often like just clear, pure savings. You don't have to spend money, you don't have to spend capex on hardware. For IoT, I think it depends on the use case, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
because and I've always felt that predictive maintenance was one of the areas where it was the clearest because you can say to a customer, look, if you can understand when something's going to fail and anticipate that failure and solve it before it happens, then you're avoiding factory downtime, you're avoiding the train stuck in the tunnel, you're avoiding the but talk to me a little bit about because PrevSens is the kind of the flagship product that you're developing. Talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges and particularly around that issue of timing and time to value. How has Blues helped you address some of those challenges?
Yeah, so for Blues, it saves us time for developing the technical parts and also solving technical issues when it comes to sending data to the cloud, since it's scalable and easy to integrate in our solution. So yeah, that's what I like in Blues technology, actually.
And talk me through PrevSense, how it works, from the data that you're collecting through to the value that the customer gets. Talk me through kind of the solution and how you position it.
Yeah, the first step is to define where to deploy the sensors. It depends on the business, and so each one has different parameters. And we focus on collecting quality data because it's very important to train our model. And then the system filters and organizes relevant information, and all this will be our machine model will train on historical maintenance data, predicted potential failures, and provide actionable insights to the maintenance team. So this proactive approach prevents unexpected downtime, reduces maintenance cost, and extend equipment lifespan.
And I think one of the issues with predictive maintenance is which data to collect.
Yeah.
Data overload, as you said, quality data is the thing. What data streams do you focus in on? Do you focus on particular things like temperature, cavitation, vibration, or is it broader than that?
Temperature, vibration, energy consumption are the most essential ones.
Hmm.
Yeah. And for us, in the beginning, we based on manually reported data to start with. And after collecting some data, we used it like to better train our models. But it really depends on the industry and what are the critical parameters to use.
And with customers, is your approach, at the beginning of the discussion to say, give us some of your historical data and we'll show you the value? I mean, is that something that you're able to do? Because that issue of the business case of the value of is the investment worth it? Are you able to say, give us your maintenance records, give us your maintenance history, and or is that
It's not,
something that you?
yeah, it's not that easy to get, data. It's very valuable nowadays, so it's not that easy. But still, there's some clients that already knows us and want us to see, like, to want us to develop, and it's kind of friendly request
Hmm.
if we don't know the client, because
Hmm.
it's really delicate to have the data from the clients. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean,
It
in most.
happens to us, like, sorry, it happens to us that clients ask for IP, like IP contract or something, just to preserve their data.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because
So it's critical.
mostly
Yeah.
the data you're
And
talking about is really key, isn't it?
yeah, and this is the challenge. So we need to deploy the sensors and get the data and try our model. And the other side, it's difficult to convince the client to invest in our solution.
Yeah,
So
I remember very much a conversation with an auto parts manufacturer in Eastern Europe back in well, actually, it was the 2000s, when I was talking to them about Azure IoT, which then was an incubation project I was working on. This very direct Eastern European gentleman said to me, so I make the same product as my competitor. I use the same machine as my competitor. I employ the same people as my competitor. The only difference is how I've configured my production line. And that's the information you're telling me you want to take and put in this thing called the cloud. And at that point, I knew the meeting was not going well. It ended shortly thereafter. But
yeah.
that issue of access to data is a huge one. There is both I don't want to give you the data I've got because it's deeply confidential. And there is
Mhm.
also, if you collect data, how are you going to stop me being overloaded by all of this data? I think a lot of industrial customers, they were told a decade ago that they needed to collect everything and create things called data lakes, which they did. And they now have petabytes of system level data, which makes no sense because it's not tagged. It's not, it's utterly impossible to interpret what it is. How do you kind of convince customers that they're not going to get overloaded, and how do you deliver the value of the PrevSens solution? Is it in the form of an iPhone app that tells the engineer on the factory floor something's happening? Is it something that is delivered in the control room? How do you kind of navigate that to just deliver value to that customer?
Yeah, well, we have an IoT platform
Mhm.
that has some alerts and some updates. We also try to help them um, perform their maintenance schedule that is already existing. So that's the main approach we use. And we try to extract value from the data, because even some breakdowns occur with happens, but there is some patterns
Mhm.
that occur most often. So yeah, it helps us to get insights.
Mhm. Now, I mean, what you do something that's very close to my heart as the ex leader of Semtech's IoT division, building LoRa and bringing it to market. You use LoRa. You use specifically the LoRa note card, but
Yeah.
the Blues note card that supports the LoRa radio and the LoRaWAN protocol. Talk to me about the advantage of using LoRa. Why did you choose LoRa over, say, Wi-Fi or cellular?
Yeah, we discussed about the cost efficiency, and since LoRa offers a greater coverage, so it minimizes the number of the gateways deployed on the site. It helped us to convince the client to invest in our solution.
Have you found any challenges with LoRa? I mean, one of the aspects of LoRa obviously is you need to install your own network. It's similar to installing a Wi-Fi network, but do
Mhm.
you find that are customers familiar with LoRa and therefore comfortable, or are they comfortable because it's established?
They
Because it's
don't
a new
care.
technology still for many.
They they don't care. They don't go deep on the technical side. Maybe the IT team, uh, like he gets curious to know more and he's interested. But the mind client, he wants just the solution up and running. So it's not one of our challenges to convince them to use LoRa.
No, that's good to hear. I mean, do you find IT? I mean, IT is always beaten about the head as being the bad guy in
Yeah.
IoT. I mean, do you find IoT teams within your clients to be helpful, or do you find them to be a hindrance to getting what?
No, they are very helpful and open to the new technology.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because there was a long
Yeah.
time there where there was fear about network. Anything that's going to come inside the firewall, these new sensors, the vulnerability, etc. It sounds like that's not something that you encounter.
No, no, I didn't encounter this kind of problems.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they were very open and now to know more and try new technologies because they know that it will help them in their work.
Hmm.
It will facilitate their work actually.
And what sorts of industries are your clients in? I mean, I know that your predictive maintenance is this vast, area that covers
Yeah.
everything from transportation to, you know, slurry pumps in process. Which industrial sectors are you finding particular traction for what you're doing, and which sorts of applications within those industries?
I didn't understand your question. What do you mean?
So, if your
Like the type
customers,
of the industry?
yeah, yeah. Are you focusing on one particular industry, or are you focusing on several different ones?
Actually, we are trying to like to create to develop a system that will grow and learn from all industries so that we can use it in all cases and we can just add or remove a module so it will work because the
Mm.
parameters are quite the same for all industries.
They are actually
Yeah,
surprising.
but it needs customization. Sometimes it needs customization and we just go with it.
Mm. Yeah, I think very often the difference between industries, because when you're talking about a piece of machinery, a mechanical object, you said
Mhm.
earlier, if you have temperature, you have vibration, power consumption, um, maintenance record. Sometimes sound is quite helpful in terms of determining when a machine is going outside the normal range of functioning. Very often the industry knowledge that our partners, I often find our partners really, they specialize in a particular industry. Mostly that's to do with the need to talk to the customer about a business case in the way that that customer understands in the context of that industry. It's less about the actual technology. It's more about in your industry, if you do this, then you're going to get this sort of saving because these are your main cost drivers. Do you find that to be the case? Do you find is domain expertise only important when it comes to talking about business case, I guess?
I think it's the part that I like the most because with IoT you can find yourself everywhere and learn each time new things. So we try to pay attention to the client's needs and like what disturb them and try to solve this. So yeah.
And do you find, I mean, you touched on it earlier, do you find the security question comes up often? And I guess, you know, obviously one of our focuses at Blues has been on ensuring that we have an extremely robust security model,
Mm-hmm.
both at the device side and obviously Note Hub. How often does security come up, and are you able to leverage what Blues is doing to solve some of those customer questions?
Actually, we trust the security part of Blues, and since our data are not that sensitive, so we just go with it. And the clients also don't ask a lot of questions in this area. Yeah,
That's interesting because that's often been
yeah.
something in the past. That's just a good sign of maturity. And you are you using, what's your cloud backend? Are you using AWS or Azure, or where does your
Azure for
platform
us.
run? Azure.
Yeah.
Do you find that I mean, again, I don't sense that customers see any great difference between the main cloud providers. It's not a question that comes up very often, I don't think, other than maybe questions of data sovereignty. You know, where is the
Mm-hmm.
data physically? Is it in? But that I've only
But
really
for
experienced that in Europe.
sorry.
I've only really experienced that kind of data sovereignty question in Europe, actually. You know, is the data in Germany or is it somewhere else? Is that something that you come across?
No, not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I guess what's the next step, really? I mean, I know that you're young in in terms of the company starting a couple of years ago, and you know, where do you see Industrie Intelligente going? And is it about building PrevSens as a product category, or is it something broader? Do you see wider opportunities?
Actually, PrevSens is the first project to use, and we will try to improve it and use it in the real life in order to, like, because here we are in the development step, and we try to put it on site because we can't know if the product is good or not if it's not on site.
Mhm.
So that will be the next step, and we will see what it will goes.
I was going to say, if you were to imagine 10 years in the future, where do you think Industrie Intelligente will be at that point?
10 years is too much, I think.
How about five?
Since since we are a startup, so you know the challenges we encounter. Maybe we will be the leader in IoT deploying solutions, like we are trying to focus on 3 or 5 fields: preventive maintenance, agriculture, fleet management, and aquaculture as well.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
But at the moment, you're in predictive maintenance
Yeah,
and
yeah, we are
agriculture.
going step by step.
Yeah. No, and I guess before we open to questions, I know that we've got a bunch of folks on the line, and so I do want to make sure that we leave enough time for them to answer ask some questions of us. If you had a magic wand, I guess, what problem or what challenge would you make go away? You know, when you talk about growing Industrie Intelligente over the next 5, 10 years, you know, what's the thing that you would make magically appear or magically disappear to help, you know, make your vision, you know, reality?
Uh, Battery problems, maybe?
Mm,
Because one of the challenges we encountered with clients is the battery lifetime for the sensors. So generally, after 2 or 3 years of use, they need to be replaced.
mm.
So yeah,
And that's with LoRa-based sensors. That's with the LoRa radio as well.
sorry.
Is that with the LoRa radio?
All
And
products, I think. Yeah, it will be a
yeah,
big challenge for all IoT products, in my point of view.
yeah,
Yeah, but
batteries have been one of those areas where there hasn't been much advance. I mean, there's been several companies in the course of the last few years that have figured out how to make flexible batteries
Yeah, there's some. We're trying to integrate it in our product, but it's still in the beginning
It
because
is.
we know if we deploy our solution, we will have this kind of problems since we encountered them when we were just using simple sensors such as temperature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I spent some time trying to build a label, a LoRa radio on a label as a tracker product, probably, gosh, 5 years or so, 5, 6 years ago now. And at the time, there were really only two providers of printed battery technology. So you
Yeah.
could print them on plastic or paper, both of which had not really figured out how to do production scale work. They could make 10 units and they would work fine, but if you asked them to make 100, it kind of fell apart. But though more recently there are a couple of companies like Dracula and others who have, I think, nailed how to produce, at a given quality at scale and at the right price, batteries which are both printable, and so you can stick them on something flexible and wrap them around a sensor, but also increasingly biodegradable, because I think one of the other aspects of batteries is, one, life, but two, what do you do with it when it's dead? And how do you, and particularly in Europe, there's increasing regulatory focus on making sure that there is a return loop for batteries. So once the battery is used, that there's a backward supply chain that gets it back into recycling. And I think that's an issue that potentially printed organic batteries can solve. But for all of the advances that we've seen in radio and I think sensor technologies, batteries are the one area that's where I would wave my magic wand if I had one too, actually.
Yeah.
It's clearly the area of, because you can restrain the energy usage to a point, but in industrial settings it's quite difficult to have a thin enough data set coming across the radio for that battery to last a reasonable period of time. And if you have to shut down the production line to replace the battery, then your business case, the value that you're delivering, it's
Exactly.
gone. In one afternoon, you can destroy the business case.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So something to add, there are some rechargeable batteries indoor and outdoor, but
Hmm.
they're still under development and need to be integrated in the solution. So because
Yeah.
most of the sensors doesn't have it integrated. They are
Well,
developing it apart.
that there are and the other thing is renewable energy, and that's again, actually, not to beat Dracula's drum, but Dracula is one of the number of companies that are trying to figure out how to print photovoltaic cells so that you can actually do away with the need for at least a big battery. You can have a super cap to support the device when the lights aren't on. But if you can have a photovoltaic cell, or indeed some other form of renewable, I've seen quite a few interesting applications of technologies that turn vibration into energy, so that you can use the very vibration that you're monitoring on the machine to actually power the sensor that's monitoring the vibration, which is quite neat. But again, a lot of those are relatively early stage, and I think it's not yet at a point of production readiness for industrial customers, at least. Um,
Yeah. I have also seen rechargeable batteries from the temperature of the board, but it's
mhm.
still also under development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it creates a different challenge of heat dissipation, which was always the thing you had to worry about. How do I
Yeah.
get the heat away as quickly as possible, rather
Yeah.
rather than how do I keep the heat and make the heat? That's
Exactly.
fantastic. So listen, I think we're at half past the hour, and I said I do want to leave some time for some of our audience to ask us some questions. So I guess let's open up. We've got a Q&A that folks have started to populate, and I'll just run down those. So the first is a question from Daniel Rogue. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Daniel. Um, how have you successfully convinced IT to allow things onto their network? I guess that's
Sorry?
a question for you. How have you convinced IT departments to allow things onto their network? I mean, I guess we touched on that earlier,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that
They
it's
were
not
just
it's
open
not
to the
something you've
solution.
encountered.
Not yet.
Well, that's what I mean. I do. The cynic in me says that you may just have been lucky with the IT teams that you worked with, because
Yeah.
for
I
Daniel.
have a good relationship with IT teams, actually.
Well, maybe that's the clue. You turn up and be friendly instead of turning up and ready for a fight.
Yeah, actually, I try to understand them,
Hmm.
not to get in fight with them, and to have a solution that works. We try to focus on the solution, not the one who is right or, engineer issues.
Well, that in itself is probably a very useful approach because
Yeah,
I there's a certain that engineers like to think they're right. We all have that trait, and I think there's a little bit too much of that of
yeah,
telling customers what the right answer is rather than listening to what they want you to do. Generally doesn't work,
exactly.
in my experience. Now then, I've got the next question. Clifton Collins, in your experience, have the component MTBF values and B, the equipment/system MTBF values being adequate to start with? I've got to admit, I'm not sure what MTBF values are.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm quite not sure too.
well, let's Clifton. Maybe you can elucidate in the Q&A thread. But you had a couple of other questions, um, and I guess the second question is a really good one, actually. In general, how long does it take to collect data to be able to build a predictive maintenance model, or some other relationship or pattern, and how do you communicate that to the client? Because most customers want value quickly, understandably. They're paying you, they want a return. How long does it
Mhm.
take typically for PrevSens to start delivering value?
I can say up to 1 year, but there are some sensors that not collect data if there is not a change of temperature or pressure. So maybe 1 year could be good to start with. Up to 1 year, yeah.
That's quite a long time. I mean, is that something that you found? Again, I think it sounds like you have a very friendly relationship with the customers that you're working with, which I'm sure must help. But has it lost you business? Have you found it to be
I
too
mean,
long?
since we started with manually repeated data, so we already have some to work with. So including this one and the one collected in real time, we could. It won't take as long as 1 year.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think I mean, I've often experienced part of the problem is that you're working in CFO timelines, so anything longer than a year's budget cycle, forget about it. And depending on the nature of the company, yeah, and depending on the size of the investment, honestly, you need
hmm
to show quarter by quarter benefit. But anything that's 18 months, 24 months, that's always, well, often that ends up being the item on the plan that gets, delayed.
But if everything needs to start, so
Yeah.
since we don't have already valuable data, discard the manually reported one. We don't have choice. From where can we get them?
Well, I guess it
Yeah,
goes back to the data lake. If you can find in the data lake, I think one of the more interesting applications of AI in this space is actually to go back into historic data sets and
yeah,
categorize and codify and annotate that data so that you know what it is, and
yeah,
you can actually discern what's quality data from what's not. And I know several companies that are doing that. Because if you can use that historic data, like you said, you can actually go quicker. You're not reliant upon the calendar, the month of data. You can
yeah,
get hold of it.
yeah.
Um,
And using random data is not a solution for me too, because we need the real data.
yeah, yeah.
So
You can randomly generate system-esque data, all day long. All it will do is tell you how accurate your the algorithm that you're using to randomly generate that data is. It's
exactly.
And going down the list, so Daniel again, Daniel Rogue. Yes, energy harvesting. I guess we talked about that a little bit. There are a number of very interesting companies at the moment who are really at the forefront of figuring out how to harvest energy from industrial systems. I mentioned one earlier,
hmm
Dracula. that's distinct because it can function at 1 lumen. So you can actually get past the limitation on photovoltaic cells, which previously was you need to be outside, you need to have direct sunshine, you need to have. So if you can work indoors on a regular light bulb, that helps. But I do feel, Daniel, that there's lots of room still for innovation, in energy harvesting, specifically in these sorts of industrial contexts, where you have heat, or you have vibration, or
Yeah,
you have, you
it's a
may not
big
have light.
challenge actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, where you've got anywhere where you need to shut down a production line. I've worked in steel mills before, where shutting down or naphtha cracking facilities. If you shut down the plant, it takes 3 months to shut the thing down, install sensors, spin it back up again. It takes another 3 months to bring up, and so you've got a 6 month loss of production, which is millions of dollars. If you then have to go back in and replace the batteries, for God's sake, I mean that's done. And you can't, and in those environments, the concept of pulling a power cable to a sensor is nonsensical as well. So it's a real limiting factor, I think, the lack of
Yeah.
technologies. Now, we had a question as well from VTech, which I'm quite interested in. So for Laura, how have you found the transmission quality and the reliability? So I guess propagation and packet loss. Have you encountered any issues with LoRa in the manufacturing environments that you're working in?
Advantage of LoRa, it doesn't interfere with the other frequencies used in the like GSM or so on. So the transmission is quite fluid, and we didn't get this kind of issues. This is
Good.
the question?
Yeah, that is the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Generally, LoRa performs quite well in those environments. You can get some interference dependent upon the power output of things like Zigbee gateways in particular.
We
Um,
try to use just one protocol at a time.
mhm.
For Zigbee, it's between the American standards and the European, so it covers all the range.
Yeah.
For us, we just use one protocol.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's
Yeah,
more the environment that you're going into. I mean, I've seen
yeah,
Zigbee networks used for security card
yeah.
systems that are just
Hmm.
jacked. Yeah, they're racked up to the full power output, and they can drown out pretty much any other signal, LoRa included, within that. Now going down the list, thank you everybody for telling me that what I forgot, which is MTBF means mean time between failures.
I remember too.
It's early in the
Yeah.
morning, hey, I haven't drunk enough coffee. But thank you, Clifton, VTech, Magnus. Um, Now, going back to that question actually that Clifton asked earlier, in your experience, have the component level mean time between failure values and the equipment or system level mean time between failure values, have they been adequate to start with? I guess um, I'm guessing before the solution is put in, how much of an issue is it for customers that they're having unanticipated failures?
I didn't get the question actually.
I'm
So,
struggling a little bit to so I'll rephrase it, and Clifton, hopefully I've got the essence of it. Um, when you go into new customers,
mhm.
how much of a problem is it that they can't predict failure? How frequently does failure happen? And is it how much of a business issue, I guess, is it? If a machine fails, I don't know, once every 5 years, but is that it, how much of that how relevant is that, I guess, to the value that you can give them?
Yeah, actually, the main objective of predictive maintenance is to avoid this kind of breakdowns. So it just predicts experience. So when we tell the client that we can avoid this kind of breakdowns, they are just happy to see that their business won't stop and cost them a lot of money
Hmm.
in meantime.
And do they calculate that value based on production lost, or do they calculate it based on employee time saved? Because one way of looking at predictive maintenance is I don't have to employ an engineer to walk around the factory collecting physical data.
All parameters are involved, actually.
Mm.
Yeah, all parameters are involved. Because even if the equipment is broken, the employees still will get paid. So, yeah.
True. They just sit there and wait for the engineer to turn up. And I
Mhm.
guess so drawing things to a close. Oh, actually, there's one question from Joe. Hi, Joe. Nice to see you. Laura has limited data collection capabilities. Do you use any other technology for gathering data on a larger scale? Great question.
Us, it's enough, the LoRa, for our parameters. Yeah, it's made for this kind of collecting data, since it's just small packets for like temperature and pressure. It's
Yeah, you're
enough.
not collecting video or anything.
No,
But you can send
no.
video over LoRa as well at a lower quality. But yeah, interesting. I'm very glad to hear that actually.
Actually, I have one question.
Mhm.
It's my time. So for Blues, I saw that you don't use Bluetooth. Why? Because there are some sensors that requires Bluetooth connection, and we can't use them in our solutions. And thinking of integrating another system to connect the sensor to the system and the system to the LoRa note card, and then it
Yeah,
makes a long way.
technologies like Bluetooth, we found to be relatively, I'll say, fragile in terms of their ability to provide a consistent and secure connection. More
Mhm.
consistent, not so much about secure. Though what we are doing, recognizing actually that issue, what we are doing in the course of the next year is starting to open up NoteHub to ingest data from every sensor type. For that reason, there are other sensor types outside of this which are not going to be enabled with a Blues Note card, but customers want and partners want to funnel the data through one single pipe. And so, what we're going to do is enable connectivity for other sensor types. So you can pump data from a Bluetooth sensor into NoteHub and have it fed into your cloud platform in exactly the same way that other data sets are. That's a good question.
Yeah.
The other thing is we've taken an approach of there are lots and lots and lots of connectivity tools out there. There's a bewildering array of different choices, and every time I go look at IEEE, there's another one that's come up. My IoT, and I've felt for a long time that there are enough tools in the toolbox. The problem is that the tools in the toolbox don't work that well. So what we focused on really is saying, well, for mid and low bandwidth, what do you need to be able to do? Well, I need to be able to send data, within the local area, or I need to be able to do that in a secure and reliable way. LoRa and Wi-Fi cover those areas really well. Both are very well
Mhm.
understood, very established technologies. I need to send data, over a public net. I need to know the network is there when I need it, and I need to be able to send data wherever the asset is, within a range of different areas. That's where cellular comes in, and the different flavors of cellular that we support both narrowband and midband, and provide a range of different technology choices that kind of cover the globe. And then more recently, we introduced, a tool to fill the other gap, which was, well, that all sounds great, but what do I do when my
Mhm.
device is stolen and taken away from a cellular network? Or what do I do if my device is on a farm, say to your agriculture use case, and there's no cellular network around? And that's why we introduced the StarNote, the satellite version of the Note card. But rather than trying to cover every single potential technology out there, what we try to do is really focus on picking a range of technologies that cover most use cases, and then abstracting away that technology so that the user doesn't have to know or care what it is. It's the same JSON API. It's the same
Mhm.
environment. It's the same. We believe quite strongly that engineers shouldn't have to spend time learning custom AT commands for a particular modem, or learning the nuances of LoRa versus Wi-Fi. That we believe that is quite literally a waste of time, when they could be focusing on actually what their customer's trying to figure out and delivering value to the customer. So that's why we haven't thus far, provided full-throated support for things like Bluetooth or Zigbee or any of the vast range of different things. Not to say that we won't in the future if there's need, if we've missed something, but that's definitely our thought process when it comes to which technologies to support. But great question.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The reason why I asked you, because there are sensors that doesn't use LoRa. So
Of course, many,
yeah.
many, and and that's why opening up Note Hub to allow ingestion of every single data type, regardless of the sensor, I think is so important, because there will always be sensors. I mean, the Note card has a physical size to it, and so if you're trying to build, a dot size sensor that just gathers temperature, you're not, the form factor is an issue. If you're trying to build a bolus, like a tablet that you make a cow swallow, that's it's a LoRa product as well. You're not going to be able to you have to work within that physical format, because the cow's only going to swallow something that's that big. And so there's always going to be sensors out there generating data that don't use note cards, and that's fine. But so what we're going to do is provide a way of integrating that data with everything else and putting it through the same pipe into your application.
Thank you.
Great question. I think that draws us to a close. I think we're at 10 minutes off the top of the hour. So thank you very much, Sarah. It's been a huge pleasure.
Thank you for you too.
And learning more about Industrie Intelligente. Thank you to the audience. Some great questions today. And with that, I will wrap up what has been the latest episode of Blues Fireside Chat. Thank you all.
Bye.